Our movie begins in a world advanced in technology, and because of a simple genetic design, humans stop aging at the age of 25. And to live an extra year after that, they must have time in the clock implanted inside each person's arm. Because in this world, there's no money. Time is what they earn, spend, and what controls their lifespan. Will wakes up living with his mother in a poor neighborhood. He spends his whole day working just to cover the living expenses. His mother tells him that they only have 3 days left in their clocks, and they'll use that to pay the electricity bill and other overdue payments. So she's going to take an extra shift at her job and delay celebrating her birthday until they're both back. Then Will runs off to catch his shift at the factory, where we see people whose time has run out. When it hits zero, they die instantly. Will finishes his job, and we learn that time is transferred through the hand, so he collects his daily wage and leaves. After that, he goes to his friend's bar, where he hears about a man whose clock has over 100 years and is buying everyone drinks. But Will notices that this man is being watched, so he goes and tells him to hide his clock and leave because he's in danger. But the man, whose name is Henry, doesn't seem to care about what Will says. Suddenly, the Minutemen gang, the most dangerous gang in the neighborhood, enters. Everyone in the place runs away, and Will's friend drags him to escape. But Will can't leave Henry behind because he knows the gang will kill him. At that moment, the gang leader Fortis tells Henry that he's going to take his time anyway, but first, they'll play a game. Henry goes to the bathroom first because of all the alcohol he drank, preparing for his death. At that point, Will intervenes, hits the gang member with him, grabs Henry, and runs away. Fortis and his men see them and start chasing after them. But Will knows his neighborhood well, so he hides inside an abandoned building and locks it from the outside to make it look shut. Once he's sure it's safe, he sits with Henry and tells him he could have died because having that much time in this area is dangerous, and that he's safe in this place until tomorrow when he can leave. Henry then asks him how old he is in real life. Will tells him he's 28 years old, meaning he's been struggling to survive for 3 years. Henry then reveals he's 105 years old and that he's tired of life, because no matter how long one lives, eventually they'll want their life to end. Will is surprised by what he says and disagrees with his way of thinking, saying he clearly hasn't seen people die because they don't have a single extra minute. Henry tells him he doesn't really know how the world works. That in order for the world to stay balanced, some people must die so others can live forever and never die. This is basically achieved by raising taxes and living expenses several times a day. That's why their world is divided into social classes based on time zones from poorest to richest. Then he asks Will what he would do if he had all that time. Will says at the very least, he wouldn't have to check his clock every few minutes or waste time on trivial things. Later, they both fall asleep, but Henry can't sleep and keeps thinking all night, until he decides to transfer all the time in his clock to Will, leaving himself only 5 minutes. When Will wakes up, he's shocked to find that his clock now has over 100 years. He looks for Henry and finds him on the bridge, realizing he's going to end his life. Will runs to catch him before his time runs out, but Henry's clock hits zero and he dies just before Will can reach him. That's when Will notices the security cameras watching him on the bridge. He then goes to his friend and tells him what happened. He transfers 10 years to him so he can take care of his family and his newborn daughter. Meanwhile, Will's mother finishes her shifts and heads to catch the bus, but she finds that the fare has gone up by a full half hour and she doesn't have enough time. The driver leaves her and refuses to take her. She starts running so Will can reach her. When Will doesn't find her on the bus, he realizes what happened. He runs to catch her, but he's seconds too late and her clock hits zero and she dies right in front of him. The next day, the police find Henry's body and the junior investigator is surprised that he was in the poor time zone, but the senior officer, Ray, isn't concerned about why Henry was there. What matters to him is who received all the time from Henry's clock. That's when we find out that Henry was a very rich and famous businessman. Before Henry left the area, he noticed there were security cameras on the bridge. Meanwhile, Will moves from his time zone to New Greenwich, the area of the upper class and the rich. He books a suite in a luxurious hotel where a girl notices him from the moment he arrives. On the other side, investigator Ray suspects that whoever stole Henry's time is no longer in the poor time zone, knowing how dangerous that would be, until he confirms that someone crossed the zone gates on the same day Henry died. His team informs him that the person who appeared on the bridge's surveillance camera is named Will, and it turns out that Ray has known Will's father for a long time. Will then attends a charity party and starts gambling with the event's host, the wealthiest man at the party, if not in all of New Greenwich. Remember the girl who was watching him closely at the hotel? She turns out to be the daughter of the man hosting the party, and her name is Sylvia. Will is attracted to her from the moment he sees her, and she's impressed by how he beat her father at the game. So she invites him to another party the next day at their house, and he agrees, especially after he finds out she's his daughter, not his wife. The next day, he sacrifices a few years from his clock to buy a car and drive to the party. At the party, he gets to know Sylvia and her family more closely. While dancing with him, she tells him she doubts he's from a rich family because his behavior is similar to people from the poor time zone. As they talk more, she tells him she envies the people there. Sure, they die, but they live how they want, unlike her, who's always followed by guards. She's rich and alive, but she can never do anything reckless. That's when he takes her to the sea behind her house and gets crazy and jumps into the water with her. But she refuses to get too close to him because he's still a stranger. At that moment, her father ends the party looking for her, so they sneak out together, acting like nothing happened. Meanwhile, Ray finds out Will's location, shows up to the party, and pulls him aside for questioning. When he asks him where he got all that time from, Will tells him he earned some from gambling, but the rest was given to him by a man named Henry who said he didn't need it. Of course, Ray doesn't believe him, but Will doesn't care whether he believes him or not, because that's the truth. He assures him the time was a gift from Henry, not stolen, and if he really wants to look for stolen time, he should arrest everyone in New Greenwich. That's when Ray realizes he's talking about justice and tells him he has nothing to do with justice. He's a timekeeper. His only job is to control who holds the time, and Will is definitely not one of the right people. He then confiscates all the time Will has, leaving him only 2 hours to get transferred to prison. Ray tells him he reminds him of his father, who used to say the same things 20 years ago. At that moment, Will hits the guards, takes Sylvia hostage, and escapes from the party. But Ray doesn't give up and chases him down the road until Will crashes into his car and manages to escape. He then notices his time is running low, so he asks Sylvia to transfer him some hours, but she refuses because to her, he's just a thief from the poor zone, and she demands he take her back home. But he tells her he's not going to do that because she's his only guarantee to stay alive. On the way, they fall into an ambush set by the same gang, and their car flips off the road. In the few minutes they're unconscious, Farties, the gang leader, shows up and steals time from Sylvia. But before he can drain all of it, he hears police sirens and runs away with his gang. Sylvia wakes up shocked to find she only has 30 minutes left and begs Will for help. He tells her not to worry because he knows exactly how she feels, and he transfers her some of his own time, but she's still nervous since it's her first time being in such a situation. Ray arrives, but they're already gone. He realizes they've been robbed, so they only have a few minutes left, meaning they couldn't have gone far. Will goes to his friend to get back some of the time he gave him, but his friend's wife tells him that because of the time he was given, he went on a drinking binge at the bar and drank himself to death. At that point, their only option is to sell Sylvia's earring. Though it's diamond, the buyer doesn't give them more than 2 days for it. Then he takes her and calls her father, asking for 1,000 years to be distributed in charity queues in exchange for returning Sylvia. That's when Ray tells him he's worried about him because he's doing the same thing his father used to do. And he reveals that his father didn't die in an arm wrestling match like he was told. He actually died because he acted the same way Will is acting now. So he tells him not to repeat his father's mistakes, but Will doesn't care about what he says and hangs up on him. As for Sylvia's father, he finds the 1,000 years too much, and his wife is surprised because that amount is nothing compared to the time he has. We go back to Will, who takes Sylvia to his apartment, and she asks him about his family. He tells her his mom died because her time ran out and he couldn't save her, and that his father died during an arm wrestling match and that he was really good at it. He tells her about his dad's technique in the game. He used to let his opponent drain all his time until there were only a few seconds left. Then the opponent would focus on his clock and get distracted. That's when his dad would flip his arm and take all his time. She's surprised about how he died, and he tells her that his father used to donate all the time he won, and that's why they got rid of him. Then they start talking about their experience when they turned 25 and their clock started ticking. Will tells her his started while he was on the street, and he started living day by day. But she tells him her issue was different because hers started while she was asleep, and all she could think of was how she'd look the same forever. She asks him if he hates her because of her father, but he tells her that no one chooses their parents or where they're born. The next day, they wake up waiting for the money her father donated to get her back, but they find out he didn't care. That's when Will tells her she can go back home because her father would never let this happen, and he gives her a gun to protect herself while she calls her father to send someone to get her. That's when she starts feeling something for him. But when she goes to call her father, she sees Officer Ray coming from behind, so she shoots him in the shoulder. Will checks his clock, but Ray thinks he's trying to steal from him, so Will explains that cops don't carry much time on them. But he's surprised to find out that Will actually gave him a few extra hours until the police arrived to pick him up. Sylvia is surprised by what he did, and he tells her that cops live day by day, so if he hadn't given him those hours, he would have died before help arrived. Then they decide to take another car from someone on the road because they can't keep going in the police car. From here, news spreads with a picture of Sylvia and Will. Will tells her she can go home, and he'll say he forced her to do everything that happened. But she refuses and tells him she wants to stay with him, and they both confess their feelings for each other. Meanwhile, Ray goes to Sylvia's father and tells him that if he finds out he helped his daughter, he'll be punished too. Her father tries to bribe him, but Ray refuses. At that time, Sylvia tells Will she can help him get all the time he needs. She takes him to her father's bank, and they rob it and take all the time capsules to distribute them to the poor. Of course, Ray finds out what happened and tracks the time, believing Will is ruining the system and harming the people he thinks he's helping. Meanwhile, Fortis is fully on alert because now most people have time in their clocks, so he starts killing anyone he can't steal time from. After what happened, Ray searches for Will in his own district, convinced he didn't leave, and since he helped everyone there, they'd protect him and not report him. At that time, Will and Sylvia sense the danger and start running, but Ray keeps chasing them without giving up, which surprises Will because that's not the usual cop behavior. Until they reach a bus where the driver recognizes them, Will bribes him with a few hours to leave before Ray catches up. The bus drives off and Ray misses them. Then Will reaches a modest hotel and books the whole place for himself. One of the workers sees him and recognizes him. Meanwhile, Fortis is turning the world upside down looking for Will and grabs anyone who might know his location. If they're useless, he drains all their time and kills them. Remember the guy who saw Will and Sylvia at the hotel? He decides to tell Fortis where they are in exchange for a percentage of the time he'll take, and Fortis and his gang storm the hotel to get to Will and Sylvia. They threaten him using Sylvia so he doesn't make a move that could cost her life. That's when Fortis tells him he really admires him because he reminds him of himself, and out of respect for all the chaos he's caused, he won't kill him like anyone else, but will take his time in an arm wrestling match to restore balance to the world. The game begins and Will uses his dad's technique, letting Fortis think he's about to win. When his focus shifts to his clock, Will overpowers him, drains all his time, and kills him, then easily gets rid of his men and escapes with Sylvia. Soon after, Ray reaches the scene and sees Will as a thief who needs to return all the time he took. But the young officer sees that Will is actually delivering justice, especially since he gave Ray time and didn't let him die. But Ray tells him he spent 50 years working hard, and he's not going to let Will waste it in a second. That's when they raise taxes and the cost of living for people. Will feels like all his efforts were wasted. He tells Sylvia that everything they did was in vain because even 1,000 years aren't enough anymore. But she tells him at least they're trying, while he tells her they should give up because even 2,000 years won't meet people's needs. They'd need 1,000,000 years, and that's impossible. The next day, she takes him to her father's company, pretending to surrender, but she's surprised to see her father increased his guards and they're threatening her like it's nothing. That's when she tells him that all the guards won't help him, and suddenly Will appears from among them and threatens him. Her father tells her that she's stealing from him, but she tells him stealing something already stolen isn't really stealing. She takes him to his office vault to open it. It contains a capsule with 1,000,000 years. Her father tries to convince her that what she's doing will destroy the balance and order of the world, but she replies saying no one should die so others can live forever. Meanwhile, Ray finds out 1,000,000 years were stolen, and it wasn't just a system glitch. He figures out Will is behind it and starts searching for him in the streets until he sees him. Then he forgets to transfer time to himself and chases after them. At that moment, Will delivers the 1,000,000-year capsule to the kid in his district to distribute it among the people. Ray then threatens Will and Sylvia, but the people step in and help them escape. He continues chasing them until he catches up, but because he forgot to transfer time to himself, his time runs out and he dies. Will and Sylvia only have 1 minute left and there's no place nearby. But Will notices Ray's car, runs, transfers time to himself, and reaches Sylvia just in time. That's when Will's mission is fulfilled and the idea of social classes is abolished. Time zones lose their value because everyone moves to live in New Greenwich and time distribution continues. The young officer who replaces Ray tells his team to go home because they're no longer needed. But Will and Sylvia's journey doesn't end there. They vow to deliver justice to society in every way, and that's how the movie ends. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.